We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that college is not unaffordable or unsustainable or the burden that it is right now.
It's important to be part of a union because you have to have a voice.
Welcome to Union Talk. I'm Randi Weingarten.
So, welcome to another episode of Union Talk. And I'm Randi Weingarten, and we're taping it on Election Day. And I'm in the middle of a bunch of Canvas kickoffs, but I really wanted to do this today. I'm so happy that we could do it with one of our lawyers, Winston Berkman-Breen, and with two of our members, Corey Mason and Stephanie Solis, one a teacher, one a nurse, to talk about student debt and to talk about what we're doing about student debt, and also to talk about a great victory that we had. Something really kind of shocking happened. I mean, you can be right about the law, and a judge can tell you that you're right about the law, but this administration doesn't seem to really want to pay attention to the law or what judges say. So when they come into court after we've made our argument and they say, Judge, we agree with them, then after we have to be swooped off the floor because we don't believe it, we immediately say, okay, Judge, they agree with us. Let's get a court-ordered stipulation. And that's exactly what they did on a whole bunch of things around student debt. So we wanted to have this podcast both to talk about what the last few months have been like, which have been really crazy in terms of people trying to get the student debt relief that they are entitled to under law, but also really make sure that everyone who's listening to this knows that we have a very special moment between now and December 31st, where we've essentially stopped the clock so that people can file for the debt relief they're entitled to. I'm not saying that all of a sudden the Trump administration has totally changed and all of a sudden they're going to give people promptly the debt relief they're entitled to. We're still going to have to fight all that, even though they say that they will. But because December 31st is a very special day, and you'll hear that from Winston and I again, probably 5 times during this podcast, the big ugly bill basically didn't renew debt relief that was all supposed to expire on December 31st of 2025. And part of what expires is the tax issues, meaning that if we hadn't gotten this settlement and any of you, with the exception of PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, got some debt cancellation after December 31st, if we hadn't gotten this, you'd be paying tax consequences on it. So say, for example, you had income-driven repayment, and instead of it being $1,000 a month, you were getting $200. You were able to reduce it to $200 a month, and then at a certain time, the rest of it got canceled. You'd be paying the difference between $1,000 and $200 in terms of the tax consequences on it. So we were really, I'm looking at Winston shaking his head as I'm talking. We really want to make sure that not just our members, but everybody knows, file for what you're entitled to right now, regardless of whether you get it right now. We have basically stopped the clock if you file it before December 31st. So let me start again from the beginning, which is we have for the last 10 years, maybe more than that, we have been fixated on trying to make college more affordable. And we've been from Public Service Loan Forgiveness that was started in 2007. That was the Bush Clinton Kennedy program to say that if you worked in public service for 10 years, that the rest of your loans would be forgiven. In 2017, Trump administration in effect, and they didn't care about it, didn't want it. So that's when we started first suing Navient and then suing Betsy DeVos and then suing Mohila, all trying to get this process to work according to what the law was. And Biden actually did what we asked him to do. We were in court. He created a settlement. We settled with him. And then there was this one big year of waiver where lots of people got public service loan forgiveness or were on track to get it. We started doing the same thing with all the other income-driven repayment plans because we kept saying, if somebody pays so much for college, when they start working, their college payments, the debt payments are $1,000 a month. How can you raise a family? How can you do what you need to do to actually have a future in America? And so we as a union kept on trying to make all these things work, reduce costs of them as much as we possibly could, defray or cancel as much debt as possible so that college is affordable. But what has happened is that Linda McMahon is actually worse than Betsy DeVos. And so the first thing they did was they took everything off the website so that nobody knew what they owed or where they should go. And Mohila, who substituted for Navient by this point, never was answering the phones. So they secretly ordered student loan services to stop processing income-driven repayment applications. They, as I said, erased forms for the government websites. They refused to go work through the massive application and complaint backlogs. But this is what they did do. If somebody was not timely on a debt payment, remember, a debt payment they may not even know about or know what it should be, Betsy DeVos sent them to the debt collectors. And in fact, there's another suit now, class action, because people have really lost good ratings because of what Linda McMahon did. So we've done all of this work to try to stop this, sue them, beg them, all of this stuff. But because of our actions, as I said up front, the administration has agreed to provide the debt relief that borrowers are entitled to under law, including canceling student debt for all eligible borrowers enrolled in income-based repayment. So public service loan forgiveness, they've agreed to do that, even though they've now messed that up in a different way by basically trying to pick and choose who should get it. But public service loan forgiveness for the people who have it right now, you're in it. They've said that that's part of what we have made sure that people have a pathway to get it. And now anybody who's in income-based repayment plans, there's now a pathway. So today I'm joined by two members of the AFT who had their lives thrown in chaos because of Trump's illegal, in our view, illegal and cruel actions, obviously in the court's view too, because the court got them to settle. Corey Mason is a teacher at Norwich Technical High School in Connecticut, and Stephanie Solis, as I said, is a nurse in Ohio at the Ohio State University. And look, both Corey and Stephanie, they were promised relief. They've done everything that was right. And the administration, instead of actually, look, bureaucracy has been bad regardless of whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration. But the Democrats, Biden tried to fix it, whereas both Trump 1 and Trump 2 have not, except by us going to court. And since I'm talking about court so much, Winston Berkman-Breen is the legal director of Protect Borrowers, who we are partnered on in this challenge and so many others. So I'm going to ask all three of you questions, and I want people, don't take notes. We are going to go to AFT.org, Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Just go to our website. You're going to be able to find what you need from going to AFT.org for more information, for more resources, to sign up for a debt clinic. We just want to make sure that you hear all of these things. So, Winston.
Hello.
Tell us, who is eligible for relief? What does it look like? And I'm going to ask you the Rachel Maddow question. Did I get it right or did I get some things wrong?
Thank you, first of all, for not only bringing us here today to talk about this great update, but for stepping up when someone needed to step up and even bringing this lawsuit. And so you did get things right, but I think it bears repeating a little bit because this stuff is complicated, right? And as you said, there's other challenges related to the same thing. So I want to make sure we zero in on what we're talking about today. So there's two programs that folks probably know. The income-driven repayment plan, which, as you heard, sets your monthly payment based on how much you earn, not how much you owe. It's supposed to make it more affordable that way. And public service loan forgiveness. If you work in public service, you can qualify to get your debts canceled after 10 years. Now, I just said PSLF is a 10-year cancellation. Income-driven repayment also has cancellation provisions. It makes your monthly payments more affordable, but if you're in it for 20 or 25 years, the remainder of your debts can be canceled. So different timelines, both cancellations. As you heard earlier, the Trump administration, when it took over again this year, basically took all of those offline effectively. It literally took them off the website. You couldn't enroll in an income-driven repayment plan or change your plan if you needed to. And they also weren't processing applications. And this is a problem because an income-driven repayment plan is also one of the plans you basically need to be on to get public service loan forgiveness. So effectively, neither of these two programs were available. And there was a lot of other stuff going on, which we could get into, but these were the main problems. They just literally weren't, the government literally wasn't doing it. So the AFT brought this lawsuit, got them in the spring to restore, at least nominally, restore the plans, put them back online, accept applications. And we got some transparency through the court. They had to submit monthly status updates to the court to let them know how well they were doing or how poorly they were doing. As it turned out, they weren't doing so well. They were accepting these plans, these applications, but they weren't processing them in a timely manner at all. In fact, for the public service loan forgiveness buyback program applications, they weren't processing applications as quickly as they were receiving them, right? The number was just going up and up and up, and that was a huge problem. And then a new problem emerged, which is that separate from processing applications, they put on their website that they weren't even going to cancel anyone's debt under income-driven repayment. So they were really not doing much. So the AFT, once we got our court reports and realized what was going on, went back to court, added some AFT members to make it a class action in addition to the organization representing the members' interests, added some individual people and their stories, and then went back into court and asked the judge to basically compel the Department of Education to process applications, to cancel people's loans when they're eligible for it, and a couple of other things. And this is where the Department of Education ultimately just agreed to do it. I think they saw the strength of the argument here. It's a recognition that the law requires this, and they just weren't doing it. And they agreed, and that agreement got entered by the court as a court order. So it's not a good faith agreement. It's a legal binding agreement by the court. And here's what they're basically promising to do. If you submit an application, some of this stuff sounds common sense, so you just got to bear with us, but it did take a court order to make sure they do it. If you submit an application, they'll process it. If you qualify for debt cancellation under public service loan forgiveness, you have 10 years of service on your loans, they'll cancel it. If you have been in income-driven repayment for 20 or 25 years, depending on the plan, they'll cancel it. If you make a payment in excess of time, if you've been on 20, 25 years of income-driven repayment, but you keep making payments because they haven't canceled your loan yet, they'll refund you those excess payments. The tax component is really important. And let me break it down a little bit. As you heard, public service loan forgiveness, the 10-year track, never taxable as income. When your debt's canceled, they don't treat that excess canceled amount as income. You're fine. That remains true. But the income-driven repayment, that 20, 25 years, normally, or rather, when the rules change at the end of this year, that December 31st magic date, your remaining debt that's canceled will be taxed as income. Even though you're not actually getting money, it's like a fiction of the tax system, right? They're going to treat it as income and you have to pay on it, even though you didn't actually get money. Now, if your debt is canceled through income-driven repayment through this calendar year, if you qualify and get it canceled, you won't be taxed. If you qualify or they process it later, you will be taxed. So what we got them to do, because the problem is they're not processing anyone right now. So there's a whole bunch of people who are eligible this year, last year, but haven't gotten canceled. And as we got closer to 12/31, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Are these people going to be taxed on their debt cancellation just because the government slow-walked their processing? And that's what we got them to agree not to do, basically. So no matter when you actually effectively get your loan canceled under income-driven repayment, if you qualified before 12/31, even if they don't get around to actually hitting the button to cancel you, if you qualify by 12/31, they won't consider it taxable when they process the forms, whenever that ends up being next year, et cetera. That was huge because that was going to be a real financial hit. We had some members with hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness, maybe because they don't work for the right kind of, maybe they work for a private hospital or something else, right? They just don't qualify. So they were going to get it through this other program and they wouldn't be able to pay taxes on it. So that's huge. The final thing they agreed to do is continue with that court reporting. So on the one hand, we settled this case, but we didn't actually close out the case. We left ourselves the opportunity to look at the monthly court reports that they're going to do and then go back into court if we have to, like we already did once this year, and say, hey, judge, they agreed to do this and they're not doing it. So we got what we came for, but also left ourselves some accountability and the opportunity to really pin it back down. So in terms of, just to wrap it up, because I know we're going to hear from Stephanie and Corey as well, but who can benefit? It's really anyone who is close to 10 years of service and needs to get their final paperwork and eligibility determined to get their debt canceled under public service loan forgiveness, or anyone who's been in debt on their loans for 20 or 25 years who just needs their government to recognize that they have now qualified for their debt cancellation under income-driven repayment and who is at risk of being taxed because of this sort of slow walk by the administration.
Thank you, Winston, so much. And as I said, we're doing this podcast. We did a webinar yesterday. All of our AFT.org documents are updated. And we have, if you're a member, we have these student debt clinics every single week for people to attend. But to listen to the podcast, to go to our website, to listen to the webinar, you don't have to be a member to do any of this. And we really, really, really want people to understand the rights they now have because of what the AFT did in terms of going to court. But the reason we go to court so much, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just to underscore what you just said is the AFT did the heavy lifting, but every borrower in the country benefits from this. You do not have to be an AFT member to benefit from the agreement that the union struck with the government.
Yes, the agreement is for everybody. But this is what motivates us. These two stories that you're going to hear today are what motivates us because our members are getting screwed for doing all the right things. I mean, Corey is a teacher. Stephanie is a nurse. They make a difference in the lives of others, kids, patients, and they should not have to be going through this bureaucratic, let me not curse, this craziness, this Gordian knot. It's not fair. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to their families. And it's part of the reason why people don't think government works. And many times, government people who don't want it to work create all sorts of different paperwork. That's what's happened now in the big ugly bill. There's so much different paperwork that's there that people just give up. But what I want to ask you is, both of you went through really harrowing experiences. And Corey, I want to start with you. I think I got this right. You made 117 out of 120 payments necessary to have your debt canceled under public service loan forgiveness when the current administration upended the process, made it impossible for you to get credit for your final 3 payments. So could you walk us through what happened? And then I'm going to ask you what the status is right now.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again for having me here to talk about my story.
Thank you for being here.
So in June of 2024, when there was the government mandated forbearance was put on everybody's account, I desperately tried to call and contact Mohela because I wanted out of it because I knew I only had the 3 payments left and was told there wasn't an option. I didn't have the opportunity. It wasn't available. I couldn't do anything about it. It was what it was. So despite that, I kept making payments. So even though I was in this forbearance and didn't have to keep making the payments, I decided I needed to keep doing it because I didn't want there to be anything that came back on me that said, oh, you missed all these payments. None of this counts. You have to start over. I don't know, something crazy. I was always just thinking the worst was going to happen. So it was probably, I just kept making payments kind of waiting. And I think I realized then in August, that should have been my 120th payment. But I didn't hear anything. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So in November, I found out about the buyback program. So this was November 2024. I found out about the buyback program, and I submitted an application and was told it would be like 90 business days. That's how far behind they were. And so I continued. I kind of just like waited out to see what was going to happen. So maybe it was like 45. Maybe it was 45 business. I can't remember because whatever it was longer and longer and longer. So I submitted the buyback application. I think it was 45 business days they told me it would take. And so I waited until that time was up. And then I contacted them, everything through chat, because I wanted to have documentation of every conversation I had with them. And was told, yeah, everything's being processed. So I waited. I kept contacting over and over again. But in this time, I was still making my payments because I didn't want anything to come back on me that I had missed a payment. I think it was in the spring, I joined the lawsuit. So my name was added to it. We went on CBS Mornings. We talked about our experience. And finally, they moved me into the new IDR, which my payment went from $364 a month to $730 a month. And that was going to be insane for me to like double the payment every single month from what I'd already been making, which, you know, as a teacher it's already a lot of money to be having paid that much. So in August, I got notification that I had made 120 payments, but that it still needed to go back to the loan servicer. So Mohila then had to recognize that I had made 120 payments. And they told me that if I wanted to, I can get into another forbearance. But I said, oh no, you're not going to trick me into getting into another forbearance. And then, you know, whatever, being like, I don't know, that would have counted against me. So I was like, I'm just going to make the payment. So I made my August payment and then my September payment, which was the double amount, the $730. And then I got notification from FSA that it had been forgiven, but it still feels like it's not real.
Right.
It still feels like I'm waiting for something else to come up. So I have like, you know, everything's printed and all of my screenshots to document everything along this whole journey, every conversation I had with everybody. So I paid like almost another $5,000 in the last year when I should have been done in August 2024.
Yeah. I'm so glad you told this, because this is what so many people have gone through, and then you just give up. Like, yeah. But that's why having a union, having your back, and being here to tell people that it can happen, but we have to, between protect borrowers and us, we're constantly at them to actually make this system work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. Stephanie, I know you've been caught in this Gordian knot. You want to tell people what's going on?
Hi, Randy. Thanks for having me on. So I have some similar parts of my story to Corey's. I've been in public service for 29 years. When I first applied for public service loan forgiveness, of course, my application was denied. Finally, when the Biden administration came through and started fixing some of the problems with that program, I applied again. And then I applied to the temporary program, the temporary public service loan forgiveness program. So then I was given credit for all of the months that I should have been given credit for. So in March or April of 2024, I believe it was, I think it was 2024. Of course, the lawsuit started. Everyone was put into that court-mandated forbearance. I did the same thing that Corey did. I called Mohila and I said, hey, listen, I want to continue making my payments. My payments had gotten down to an affordable amount. I really want to continue. I'm at 91 payments. I want to keep going. They said, no, even if you make your payments, they won't qualify. You won't get public service loan credit. So I was stuck in this forbearance. I said, well, what do I do? They had no options for me. They had no recommendations for, at that time, if I had switched to an income-driven repayment program, it was not clear if I would stay on the public service loan forgiveness track. So I kept calling Mohila, kept calling the Department of Education, trying to get some sort of guidance. I kept doing like loan simulators, and then I found out about the buyback program. But they told me that if the forbearance did not put me to the 120 months, that I could not do the buyback program. So I said, well, what can I do? And they never had any information. I'm still stuck in limbo about how to resume paying my payments and getting back on track for public service loan forgiveness. I now will be very close to the 120 with this forbearance that we have been into. That's been about 18 months. We're coming on to 2 years. So that's 24 months. I would be very close to my 120 payments if I could just get back onto the public service loan forgiveness track and figure out how to keep going. But the government has made it so much harder to do that.
What we're doing for everybody who's listening, one of the reasons that we have Stephanie on is because that's why we've had to go to court. And that's why we've had to use some people who are really brave to have their names out there. Look, Winston and me, we have our names out there all the time. It is what it is. You know, people go after us all the time. But for folks who are teaching or who are nursing, it's like, they didn't put themselves in this position to have to go through this Gordian knot. So part of what's happening here is by having the public service loan forgiveness, we know that you're going to eventually get the relief that's intended. That we know right now, but we're going to have to get you through the finish line. But for income-driven repayment, for people who are in that, and so many people got put into forbearance, I'm looking at Winston as I'm saying it, too, and then they got income-driven repayment. And because the SAVE plan went goodbye, we got terms that were not as good. But we're going to make sure that because you've qualified for at least that until we get you qualified for going back into public service loan forgiveness and out of forbearance, your union is going to keep on making sure that you get through the finish line. And that's why we wanted to have somebody like Corey who got through the finish line with a lot of agita, and some of the Stephanie who's still in this miasma. That's what our union is doing for people. And that's why we bring all these suits. And that's why we're doing the legal clinics. And that's why we have the oversight in the lawsuit, as Winston just said, so that we can bring these things back to the judge if we can't get them fixed on our own. Did I get that right, Winston?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think we've already experienced that once in this case where we had to go back, and we've gotten both great outcomes both times we've gone back, and hopefully there's not a third, but we'll do it if we have to.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted people to hear this, again, not to take notes, but to take hope from Corey, to take resilience from Stephanie, and that to know that we are on the case, no pun intended, because we are going to keep on fighting in every which way. The courts, the Congress, the courts of public opinion, and even sometimes we win against the Trump administration and they agree to actually make sure that we can make college affordable for everyone particularly everyone who goes into public service. So I just want to ask all three of you, any last comments for our listening audience on this election day?
I think I just want to say thank you to AFT. My colleague at the school where I teach, we have been going through this together, and she just got hers finally forgiven and through like the buyback, but we both have been fighting so much, and it was really nice having each other. But now here there's somebody else that I know, and just really knowing that we're not alone in this has been really, really helpful and made me feel a lot more hopeful throughout the entire process, knowing that AFT was fighting for all of its members who are working in the public sector to give back to our communities, just like you said earlier.
Well, Corey, we love and honor that you're working for kids every single day and that you deserve this. And so thank you. Stephanie, any last words?
Again, I'd like to say thanks to AFT and to our union for continuing to fight this on our behalf. it is hard to navigate this process, especially when you have places like Mohila that, they don't answer the phone. You have the U.S. Department of Education that they take the information down off their website and you have to wait hours to get in. I don't have hours to sit on the phone to wait to talk to a representative. I've submitted claims to them, dispute claims about forms to get processed and so forth, only to get some automated message back saying that they've processed it when they didn't. So I do appreciate you guys taking this on and doing the heavy lifting to help make this an easier process for all of us. And hopefully I will get through these next 18 to 20 months or so.
And
to get where I
Stephanie,
need to be.
we are not going to rest until we help get you through that finish line. And thank you.
I appreciate it.
Really, thank you. And Winston, any final words that you have?
Yeah, I think just to echo everyone that, it takes hard work and commitment and the AFT stepping up on behalf of its members, and then in turn, its members stepping up to help AFT in the court. The one thing I want to say to folks is all this great outcome is pretty automatic except for one population of people who have been on their loans for 20 or 25 years and who are currently in the SAVE plan forbearance. Those are the only people who might have to take action before 12/31 by getting onto a different payment plan. So for those folks, if you think you've been on your loan for 20, 25 years and are currently in the SAVE forbearance, you should reach out to the AFT, go to the debt clinics. You've got about 7.5 weeks before that 12/31, so don't sleep on it. Most other folks, part of the benefit of the agreement that the AFT got is that they don't need to panic because there's an infrastructure in place to help them as soon as things get moving. But for those folks with really old loans in the SAVE forbearance, they should reach out and go to a debt clinic.
And if you don't know, reach out, come to a debt clinic. If you're not our member, then, we have an associate membership. Sign up for that for a little while and then you'll see what you want to do. But this is the way we can help you. So I want to just say thank you to Corey, to Stephanie. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being engaged in this. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you that you're doing everything you can to help people who are sick or kids who are trying to learn. Really thank you for making a difference in the lives of others. And Winston, thank you for being such a terrific legal beagle. And I really, really appreciate it. Said as another lawyer who watches and admires your work. And for everyone else, look, this is what we do. This is what unions do. You don't just talk about affordability. You got to walk the walk. And this is why we're trying to do this and using this as a public service to say, let's make sure you're filed through either income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. We force the administration to put these things back online, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that college is not unaffordable or unsustainable or the burden that it is right now. So thank you, everyone.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Union Talk. Remember to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and tune in every other week for a new episode. Thank you, be safe, and be well.